It's Friday, March 15th, 2024.
And I'm Jeremy Wright, and welcome to another episode of Tank Talk. So, it's the beginning of spring, and I'm about to just run through and give you a view of all of my indoor aquariums. Hopefully, the kitty cats and the toddler will stay out of the view, and we'll just be able to have a quick display. So, this is Tank A, 55-gallon Central American, so North America stuff. And it's full of guppies, and about every third week I have to go through and harvest roughly a pound of Najas guadalupensis, which is guppy grass, out of this tank just to allow the other plants to keep growing. Otherwise, they will get completely shaded, and the cool stuff down at the bottom won't be able to continue. But let's get a look at the cool stuff down at the bottom. So there are grasses. There's pearl weed, which is sort of center screen. It's a Sagittaria grass. Kabamba. What is that little thing? So this is a plant that's actually kind of a mystery. It was sold to me as an ambulia, which would have been a centrally South Asian plant, but that's not actually what it is, to my knowledge. So that thing right there is a mystery plant. It may actually be an ambulia, but I don't know. So that's what it is. There's hair grass here. Toward the back, more pearl weed. Now that's a native pearl weed here to the central Arkansas area. There is some hornwort growing in there. It's hard to see, but it's sort of center screen right now. It's that plant growing up right through there. Moving back over here. Are these dwarf chain swords? In fact, yeah, they are. There is Physidens fontanus moss growing down in here. It's hard to see, very, very hard to see. It's also growing on this little bump on the stem. Now that bit of hardscape, that's a grapevine. It's actually two grapevines, big hardwood grapevines that were several years old. The grass up front, now that may be a dwarf Sagittaria grass. Moving through the tank, there's also, I don't know where we're gonna find it, right up here. Elodea densa, it's that stem growing down there. And there's some easier view, Elodea densa. And down toward the bottom, there's some Vallisneria grass, also very hard to see. And this tank is quite a bit different than the other tanks. They're a lot easier to see what's going on in them. And back over into this area, some of the same of what we saw on the other corner. And we'll just kind of move up and through the tank. But every 3 weeks or so, I have no choice but to harvest guppy grass for the reason that you can see. And I generally send this off to a friend of mine who runs a local fish store in western Arkansas. Shout out to Shade Tree Aquatics. And I actually need to get a red root floater order sent out to them probably today or tomorrow. But I have to develop a new way of shipping it. It doesn't like being shipped my way. So if you happen to know a good way to ship red root floaters, drop something in the comments. But I'm going to be inventing a new way. I think I'm going to use little snap together containers and keep them separate but floating on water. So we'll see how that works. What I'm thinking is kind of like the little containers that you would see like in those things that like the exit of stores where you can drop a quarter in, turn the thing, and like a little plastic container falls out with a little toy. So I don't know if that's gonna work, but this is what's up with Tank A. It's right now the guppies in here. I've moved some around. I've been pulling my orange flame gups out of here, and I'm trying to let these yellow Guppy Endler hybrids sort of be the males that take over the tank and continue breeding out. So this is going to kind of be a yellow guppy, like cobra snakeskin pattern, and we'll just see what happens long term. Actually, there's one gup that I need to pull out. So see the orangish dude? I'll come back and catch him and put him in another tank, which I'll show you shortly. Pausing, moving over to tank B. All right, this is tank Bravo, tank B, which was in my son's room. We call him B. Since we've shifted bedrooms, this is now my daughter's, my 2-year-old's room, and Rockstar has moved up to the big kid bedroom. But there's an issue with this tank. It's just got diatoms all over the front glass, and I did not take the time to scrape them. And that's just what's up. So 29-gallon convict cichlid tank. It is a planted tank. They do allow some of the plants to survive, but for the most part, this is just a fairly interesting convict tank, and they've just dominated the area. This is my main, what I would call my main convict tank. It's not my, maybe it is the largest convict tank by a little bit. I think my other is a 27.7 gallon. This is a 29, even though this one doesn't look as big as the other. I may need to do some more dimensions and recalculation, because the other one, it just looks bigger than 27, but that's what it came to by my cubic inches to gallons calculation. So let's get a peek down in here. Sorry for the reflections. So they're allowing a large Anubias to stay alive. Fake plant. It's only there because I needed something to keep them from attacking each other. Sword. This sword has not thrived in here. Excuse me. What has thrived in here? Plant-wise, pretty much nothing. They're clinging to life because this is a convict cichlid tank, and that's just what's up. There are 2 breeding pairs in here. They ravage and continually pull up the Anubias. You can see there's one here. That's just how it is, and I don't fake this stuff. I just come show you what's going on in the tank without like dressing it up or cleaning the glass up, replanting everything. I'm just showing you what really happens, right? And I think that's kind of the heart of this channel, is to try and give you a pure view of what's going on, what's happening, instead of just trying to get, you know, the fake-o stuff and then giving you a bunch of editing and cleaning stuff up and polishing it up and then showing you something. Everybody can do that. I'm showing you what's really going on if you don't do that. If you're doing it well and don't do that. So, diatoms on the glass, who cares, right? We care about the fish inside and the plants inside, even though the fish don't care about the plants inside. But, I don't know, there might be 20 or 30 convicts in here, and they just keep spawning. And the younger ones, they do like their own population control. So the younger ones get in to these areas when the babies are hatched, and the so I say these are the young ones. Let's get a size comparison between a larger one and those. I guess they're just not out right now. Oh wow, check this out. This group has spawned up here. I guess they think that's a safer spot. Interesting. Never seen them do that before. That's a first. So, but as I said, they engage in some population control, and we will see, you know, some aggression from the big ones, the parents up here. So there's a parent, and they're going to be chasing the others away from this area. That's just normal convict behavior. They're great parents, just great parents. But you can also see there's one over here. So these guys, they're not, they're much closer to us than the fish in the back. So not nearly as big, but they're hawking the area. And the other spawning ground is down there for the other pair. Yes, you can have multiple pairs of convicts in the same tank. You just need to give them enough space. 29 gallons probably minimum that you can have 2. 55 would be better. 40-gallon breeder may be better, but clearly they're getting by, they're doing it. So maybe I will take some of these Anubias that have been pulled free and add some more hardscape yet again to this tank and try to attach that Anubias to the hardscape. And you can do that lots of different ways. Hot glue is not my preference, but it works. Super glue works. But I just need to resolve how they keep pulling the Anubias up and away. Now the Java Fern, it's pretty well attached, and the reason for that is because it was well attached before the convicts came into this tank. And Driftwood, they moved this around, so I probably need to add some more just hardscape in general. Otherwise, that's been tank B. What do I deal with in here? Really, the main thing I fight in this tank is phosphate levels, and that's because I have to feed quite a bit of fish. And honestly, this is probably the only tank that I do regular water changes on. So the reason for that is because I'm trying to drive down phosphate levels, which are increased by adding food. And there aren't enough plants in here that survive. The plants that do survive are not fast growing. Now there are some floaters, there's some guppy grass, but that stuff doesn't survive, right? It doesn't thrive, it just survives. Anyway, that's tank B, the convict cichlid tank. Let's move on to tank C. All right, tank C, tank Charlie. This is a 3.5 gallon nano tank. Just a fairly standard planted aquarium by modern standards. It's got some purchased aqua soil, don't know the type. Plants are jamming along, but they're not jamming because of the substrate. They're jamming because of the setup. It's pretty decent lighting. It's an Aqueon light. My cat regularly knocks this a little bit crooked. The Arrowwood here, dying here because it's close to this heat. It's actually hot there. So if I could bump it aside, it would do better. Whatever. It just does that. So, meh. Mexican petunia growing up from the tank. What else is growing up from here? Dragon wing begonia. Oh, this is kind of cool. Just Italian parsley and some zebra tradescantia. And anything else growing in there? Nah, that's about it from what's growing on the top. Down in here, I wish I could tell you what that is, but I actually don't know. It was gifted by a friend. The crypts over here. It looks like it's time to start pulling some ram's horns out. Now, I feed ram's horn snails to my convict cichlids, so they're never a problem. Ludwigias, one here, one here. It's not quite time to trim those, but it is time to trim these. So I'll probably come back down into this area, maybe give that a snip and a replant. It's always nice to look down to the bottom, make sure it's still rooted. Yes, it is. Cardinal tetras, there are only 2 of them. Gups. Some pretty cute guppies. Those came from Aquashella, and yeah, starting to do their coloration. I had to add some females of a different variety, so I hope that their colors don't get affected too tremendously. But you know, honestly, they just don't look too healthy. Like the females up front from my ventures look fine, but let's look back at this guy. He's got the skinnies, I think. I don't know if he came to me sick or, oh, I doubt it. Yeah, ram's horn snails can be a vector of some internal parasites for fish, and that's just what it is. So that may actually be going on. It's the first time I've noticed that, but both of those fish look scrawny and sickly and like I might need to pull them out and treat them. But generally I find that when they get to that point, there's not a lot you can do about it. They really won't eat the meds when you try to mix the Melifix with some internal parasite meds. It just doesn't really work that well. That's tank C. I'm a little disappointed looking in there, seeing that I have what looks to be sick fish, but you know, you gotta find it somehow, right? So moving on to tank D. All right, this is tank D. It's a 20-gallon tall, similarly planted tank. This is mostly a black molly tank. It's kind of cosmopolitan. It does have Malaysian trumpet snails, which you can see on the glass. It's got plants from basically around the world. Big Rubellacea, crypts down at the bottom, very small crypt for now. Pearlweed, some Mayaca, a hornwort, a little bit of guppy grass, some Java fern coming out of the top of Buddha there. It's probably a moneywort, some Vesuvius, and then lots of redroot floater. This tank has a small hang-on back and a Hygger lamp. Those are some of my favorite lamps, some of my very favorite aquarium lights. But the sand in this tank, this tank has never thrived by my ratings, and I think it's because of the type of sand. So this was, I bought something that I thought was something else because it was in a black diamond package. I generally go to Tractor Supply when I'm trying to buy black sand and buy black diamond blasting slag. It's kind of sharp. It's not the greatest thing to put in with fish or snails that really comb through the substrate, but this is not that stuff. This is a different blasting media that was dark, that was in a similar bag, and I didn't read the package, so always read your packages. But this was just a dark brown sand. And it's kind of fine, and it has formed a barrier layer rather than allowing nutrients and water to flow through this sand. It's kind of formed an impermeable or semi-impermeable barrier. And I think that's part of why this tank has not thrived the way others do. So also in this tank, there are a few endlers, males only. No, never mind. There are females. Just kidding. I was just wrong about that. There's a sparkling gourami. She's toward the back. And there is an orange keely somewhere in here. Oh, he's hiding down at the very bottom. You can just barely see him right now. He's hiding down there. Uh-oh, sorry. I'm not gonna get him in focus because there's too much other stuff. So I'm going to keep just planting and planting and planting this tank because it just hasn't done what I want with it. It doesn't look great to me. It's healthy. It's just not thriving like I expected it to. And I do think that sand is why. But otherwise, meh, I'll keep trying stuff. Mayaca did not thrive in here. It kind of died back. And maybe some of that is because the lighting gets very compromised by the redroot floater, which grows really well on the top of this tank. But otherwise, there's some Elodea densa also, and Acarus. That's tank D, 20-gallon tall. And this is tank E, tank Echo. It is probably a 5-gallon. But honestly, this tank gets forgotten because it normally has stuff just sitting in front of it. But it's also underneath stuff here in my guest bathroom. And it's a pretty cool tank, but kind of like tank C, it's got some Mexican petunia growing up and out of it, and it's pretty high. I'm definitely not trying to be on camera today, but hadn't brushed my hair, haven't cleaned my mirror, whatever. But Mexican petunia, really cool plant, really cool plant. This stuff, it's a stone crop that hasn't done well. Down in here, that's just an algae colony. This is red Reely shrimp in a half-gallon jalapeno jar. And then down here is a slightly larger, maybe a 3/4 gallon cherry shrimp jar. They're just banging. There are more shrimp in there than I started with, which is kind of the indication that it's doing well. But back to tank E. I'm keeping track of Pilea, which is the aluminum plant. It's in the mint family. I actually made a video short about this particular plant. It was sold to me as an aquarium plant by a local fish store. However, it does not do well submerged. It may do better if you infuse a lot of CO2 and really high lighting. I'm not going to get into that. I've learned over the years, I used to do high tech CO2 injected tanks. Then I discovered that if you just do, now this is not a tank, my type. This is just a gravel substrate. It used to be a crayfish tank. And from there it kind of evolved into a guppy tank. But most of my tanks have soil under sand, and they actually generate their own CO2. And if you run a CO2 drop checker in your tank, a little glass bubble with some color changing indicator fluid, if it runs in the olive green color in between blue and yellow, that's kind of the ideal mode and zone as far as CO2 saturation or solution in the water. And my tanks run that color long term, like for years. So I no longer do high tech CO2 infused tanks. I think that's kind of lower tech than the stuff we're doing now, which is natural tanks. Many of you have heard me talk about that before, but that's why I stay away from that stuff. However, if you do that, you may be able to get a plant like this particular Pilea to survive submerged. However, I wouldn't recommend it, but it does great growing as an emergent plant up above the water. The other plant here, Chinese evergreen, and pothos. So what else is growing in here? Some Amazon frogbit, more guppy grass. What is this stuff called? Knotweed. I can't remember the actual Latin for it. Some corkscrew grass. And I guess that's about it for what's growing in here. Lots of ram's horn snails that seem very healthy. Here's kind of a mutant ram's horn. Look at that. Pink. Like, that one's actually really cool. That's really cool. Really, really cool. I might pull that one out and try to start breeding it or something. That's a really cool snail. I just noticed it for the first time ever. But yeah, this is a jamming little tank that's normally got stuff stacked in front of it, so I don't just get down here and stare at it very often. It's more like my house guests that look at this tank. But yeah, it's what it is, and I am what I am today. So let's move along to, actually I'll show you these little things. They're really cool. So just a quick look in these shrimp jars. Soil under pool filter sand, lots of plants, unfiltered. You can see this one has many different types of plants in it. Many different types of plants. You can sort of see the lighting above this stuff. So yeah, it's got pretty decent lighting for the room. There's one of the shrimp down there. They're hard to see. There are moments I'm like, where are my shrimp? Are they gone? And and then I'll seed 3 of them or so. Anyway, it's probably a good time to do some water testing on these guys. The little systems need it more often than the larger systems. This is probably even a cooler system here. It's been going like long term, like maybe close to 2 years now. This is just sand, and you can see it's got some cyanobacter growing down in the sand there, but it's just a bunch of different plants. Mayaca, which is kind of hard to grow in a system like this, unfiltered, not really highlighting, but ramming, jamming, digging it. So that's jar 1 and jar 2, as I call them. This is J1, and this is J2. I was looking around, and I guess I don't have a tank F right now, so maybe we'll call this tank F. This is just another jar. So this is a Kirkland, like a Costco snack jar. It's pretty big, so like compared to my hand, it's this is like the large size. It's got endlers growing in it. And similarly, it's soil under pool filter sand. It's got Malaysian trumpet snails, Sesquitertang, a large crypt that has kind of been recovering. Now this was only set up like within the last few weeks, maybe 3 weeks ago. And it's rocking along. So in the future, I expect the crypts are going to start growing outward. Hornwort is just now kind of growing up and out. Elodea densa came unrooted. I need to plant it again. There's a little bit of guppy grass in there. What else? Stuffs. I wouldn't mind planting this a little more heavily. And then behind it, oh, you know what? This is tank F. I just didn't label it. F for frog. Haha. I need to grab a chalk marker and actually label this. So for those of you who've been following along, I was doing daily updates, but now I've switched to weekly on my tadpole tank. Okay, sorry, had a brief interruption. So looking back, this is the leopard frog tadpole tank. It's a 5-gallon tank. Now, the story behind this was my son was playing around my dad's pond and found the frog eggs and then collected all 2,000 or something of them. And I was like, oh my gosh, no. Where did you get those? Put them back. And he threw a fit. Why can't I keep them? Why can't I keep them? I was like, all right, look, we'll keep a few and we'll watch them and learn from them and see what happens. So I actually have a separate playlist. If you click on my channel in the playlist, you can look at the frog/tadpole tank playlist and watch this stuff. So we were doing daily updates for the first 2 weeks, actually for the first like 12 days. And then I was like, there's not enough happening, so we're switching to weekly updates. But this is a pretty interesting tank, and I took a moment to actually give it a label. Tank F. F for frog. Haha, cool, easy to remember. And otherwise, it's pretty similar to my other tanks. Soil, under sand, under with, some plants. And the only animals in here are snails and tadpoles. Now, there are a couple of ram's horn snails that I see in here. I'm going to be picking those out and tossing them in the convict tank right behind it because I want it to kind of be a area specific type thing, but really cool. I did identify one of the plants. Actually, I had some help from a friend. Calitrichia palustris is that little plant back there, and I forgot what this one is. So I'm going to get my daughter set up with her next thing and then come back and show you tank G. But otherwise, this is pretty cool because we're able to watch the tadpoles develop, and I'm pretty sure they're going to be leopard frogs.
whether they are leopard frogs.
Okay, now we're just basically moving right beside where we were over to Tank G. Tank G has a note on it, Lux, L-U-X, bad handwriting, but Latin for lighting. This tank would benefit from more lighting. Okay, maybe this is a little better view of Tank G. So this is a 10-gallon soil under gravel tank. A little bit different than how I generally arrange them. Very old tank. You may have heard me talk about resealing this and rebuilding it. It was a hand-me-down from my grandmother, and I'm lucky to still have my grandmother. She's 91, and she was one of the people who really got me into this hobby. So what's in here? Cool stuff. Little Anubias, Salchinanthera renicky, Calitrichi. I'm not actually sure what that is. Something was making a sound behind me. I was confused. Mayaca growing in a few little sprigs here. Seswassertang. Philippine fern, not to be confused with Java fern. Notice the kind of bumpies on the face of the fern, as opposed to Java fern, no bumpies on the face. Let's show that again. Ripply face, fronds, it doesn't have the bumps. Pearlweed and Rotala growing together. Pearlweed, you can tell because it's got leaves growing out every 90 degrees. Rotala is going to be every 60 degrees. And there's Elidea densa and Uvulaceae. And let's see, a little bit of duckweed, some redroot floater. No filter on this tank. Runs pretty stable, pretty nice, pretty awesome, but no filter. Little grasses, small crypt growing over here, some milfoils. Let's see, they're down in this area. I've had to continually replant them. Let me see if I can pull some of this stuff aside. There we go. There's the stuff's like down here, here. Kind of hard to see with the Ripley's. They think they're going to be fed again, and they're not. Have no fear. So that's kind of Tank G. Not really a lot more to show than that. Okay, I think Tank H was the jar here. Anyway, this is Tank I. It's another 5-gallon, and this is where I have been doing the flame orange guppy breeding exercise. So these are the gups that I won Best of Show Arkansas, best fish of show. I was really proud of that. At one of our Arkansas Aquatics shows and swap meets. And yeah, so not just best guppy, but best fish of show were some of the ancestors of these guys. And I do think they're a pretty banging awesome guppy, like honestly. But I'm trying to restart this strain, and it's going to be a little bit challenging, but I'm 6 months or so into this breeding exercise, and yeah, rocking right along. I probably need to introduce some different females in here and maybe begin pulling the adult males out and continuing this exercise in another tank, but just to keep the different generations separate and try to keep it going as well as possible, because this is an exercise. This is one of the only breeding exercises that I care about. And I'll show you another one later. I've got some albino convicts, or what I think to be albino convicts. But this tank's pretty interesting. It's also soil under pool filter sand, unfiltered. Now there is a hang on back filter that's just sitting here, but it's not on. You can see it's just It's literally just sitting here because I don't have the other tank that it was going. Actually, it was sitting up here. Uh-oh, bumping lights. It was sitting up here, and for some reason it just came down here, and I can't remember the exact reason or rationale behind that, but it's here. So, quite a bit of stuff going on, but you just can't see it because I've got one side just totally blocked off. Similarly, Mexican petunia, Chinese evergreen growing up and out of the tank. So it doesn't need to be filtered because it's got a ton of biological filtration. Way more plant matter than animal mass. Down in the tank, there's some hornwort growing on this side. There's a little bit of spiral valve and guppy grass. On the other side is really where the more interesting plants are, or were, but I may not be able to see them to be able to call them out to you right now. So, oh, there's some stargrass, like in the back. Man, reflections are just killing us right now. Hornwort, some hairgrass. Man, we just can't really see this tank too well right now, so whatever. That's tank I, and yeah, I'll be labeling some stuff a little better. So moving along, tank J. Now this is an exceptionally cool tank right now, but it's new. So let me make sure I said that right. Is this tank? Yeah. So tank J, in fact. So it needs its own light. So I've got that labeled. It has some, this is a native tank. Now the hang on back filter up above it, first off, I'll back up and show you this. Stuff goes up to the ceiling. So that's sweet potato stuff growing from a tank in front of it. Oh gosh, I messed up. I got out of order. This is tank H, so we'll come back to that. I knew I'd missed tank H somehow, but we're on tank J now. We'll go back to tank H. And I'm going to click off the lighting that's back here, so we ditched the reflections. 37 gallon, and I need to put like a black background behind this tank because I don't like seeing through it to the other stuff. But for now, we're just gonna have to deal with that. And there's also a hang on back on the front of this tank. Now, from the other side of my desk, it is the back, and can't really do anything about that. So I'll probably be taking a hang on back this size and putting it up on the side of this tank because it'll probably fit, and that will allow me to move this somewhere else. And this is a pretty big hang on back. It's like the size of a 455 or something, but it's on a 37 gallon. So let's talk about this tank now. It has the Calitrichia palustris and Proserpinaca palustris, or Calitrichia. There are two species in Arkansas. The Proserpinaca palustris, this is something that's actually kind of contention because it's being debated if this is a native plant or if it was introduced. I've seen it only in one place, so I can't say. Native pearlweed in the back, a little bit of what is that over here? It's a I'm losing the word. I'll think of it in a second. Riccia fluitans growing on a I think this is like a boxwood stump that came free in a drift. I found it on the banks of the river. Now, the plants were not harvested from the Arkansas River. That's not legal. They were harvested from private land. However, driftwood, it is legal to harvest for personal use, so I do have that in here. And the Riccia was harvested at the same place as the Proserpinaca. The Calitrichia was harvested from my dad's pond, as well as the pearlweed and I'll think of it, water primrose. There's some like slime mold stuff growing from this bit of wood, and there are several types of snails in here. There just aren't enough to deal with that yet, so I'm probably going to have to introduce some more invertebrates, and hopefully I can find some local ones because I don't really want to introduce fish yet. Down at the bottom here, this is pretty interesting. So a bit of fallen wood that has two types of moss growing on it. We're going to zoom a bit. Two different types of moss from what I can tell, and snail eggs. And I've really been waiting on those to develop. I'm thinking they're just going to be pond snails, but we'll see. We shall indeed see. And down in the lower reaches of this tank, so there's leaf litter from a local waterway that came with some relatively interesting little stuff, and we probably can't even get that in focus. It's so small. Yeah, I don't know what that is. Little white thing swimming. That's the smallest thing I've actually seen in here. The other things are like copepods, isopods. And I'm going to try and keep finding more of that stuff. But this tank is going to be a gem. It's just not quite there yet. It needs some more leaf litter, which will bring in some more invertebrates, microinvertebrates, macroinvertebrates, more biodiversity. And when these guys, the Proserpinaca and the Riccia fluitans, really start growing, this tank is going to be amazing. Amazing. I have the vision. I just have to get it there. So, not there yet. We're on like day 5 on this tank, I believe. So, it's not very far in. So, I recently resealed this tank, but it is a used tank. It's got some scratches on the glass, and obviously it has a hang-on back filter on the front, so a little bit difficult to view, but hey, it's easier to view than the little 5-gallon beside it. You know, that tank down there was like super hard to see. This one's a lot easier, but I may leave it kind of low lighting. I don't know. Pretty cool. But I'll probably take this filter off the front when I get the other filter up on the side. I just don't really know where I'm going to put. Meh, it doesn't matter. It'll rock along. It will come to me when the time is right. But yeah, little stuff swimming along. I don't know if you can see that little thing. There's a little white speck on the glass, kind of center screen, and it's, yeah, I can't tell what that stuff is. But I'm hoping that within a few weeks I'll have a lot more leaf litter down here from local waterways, healthy local waterways, and this is just going to be a Central Arkansas native biotope tank, and I'll be able to see what grows, and more importantly, I'll be able to share with the world what awesome stuff is growing here. And that's tank J. So now we're going to back up to tank H, which I skipped over. Okay, tank H. This is a 27. This can't be. This must be closer to a 30 something. This is the tank that I was saying I needed to do some recalculation on. And indeed, I need to do some recalculations here. Because this is, I don't know, maybe that's right. I just don't believe it. So whatever. My former calculations were like 27.7 gallons. And anyway, convict cichlids. I mentioned there was another breeding project. So look down here at some of these little guys. What seem to be albino convict cichlids. Not all of them, just a few of them. And I think that's cool. So polar blue convicts with albinism. Okay, Sweet. Similarly, this tank is soil with pool filter sand over it. Lots of plants. Toward the bottom, there's just a mass of combinations: Seswassertang, Java moss, Christmas moss, guppy grass, Elidea densa, and it's just a wad. The only planted, or like substrate planted plant in here that has survived is this guy, and I wish it were doing a little better. It's just not. And I can see there's a little bit of surface film here, so I probably need to maybe do some surface skim, and that's probably from decaying plant matter down in here. Just when things start churning and plants get pulled under and the convicts start picking at it, it ends up decaying. And then we end up seeing a little bit of surface film. So we'll go over and look at the hang on back. It's got sweet potato, parsley, Tradescantia, Mexican petunia, and that's probably it for now. It's growing out of here, but let's get a look at the sweet potato. So it's growing down through this stuff and around the other to the other side of the tank. Down here, now my son and my cat were picking at this stuff, and I think they've effectively stopped this branch or vine from growing too well. But I would literally just walk by and see my son just like grab it and rip leaves off it. I'm like, what are you doing? Quit. Don't do that. Don't destroy. We let things survive, not destroy them, right? And whatever. Red root floater just grows like crazy on top of this tank. Grows like crazy. And that's great. There's some arrowheads from the tank next to it that are growing over into here from the 37-gallon Arkansas tank. And then, yeah, just looking up and above, this stuff just grows literally to the ceiling and then bouncing off of the ceiling. And I like that just fine. I like that just fine. It's not an area I walk through. It's just kind of cool. So we'll go over and look at some of the stuff on top of that tank in a moment. But parsley, a lot of herbs, you have to be careful. The water flow has to be up, so there's not like slime or fungus really growing in that. But as long as you keep the water flowing kind of clean and clear, you can grow herbs like basil, parsley, Pilea is an example. Pilea is in the mint family, so mints. Lots of cool things will grow from the top of a hang-on back. And let's look over here. So arrowheads, Chinese evergreen, more Tradescantia, pothos, you know, that's kind of a classic aquarium plant back here. Pothos, devil's ivy, growing back there. I generally like growing that stuff in Asian tanks, but I don't currently have an Asian tank. And then there's a little bit more Mexican petunia. I get this stuff from my neighbor's garden. And I guess it's time that I can click on some of the lights from my tubs behind here. And yeah, back here is just kind of my science lab spot. But yeah, it's just floating plants growing. Otherwise, I think we have talked about most of the tanks today. We're at like the 50-minute mark, and yeah, thanks for sticking along. I'll be giving weekly updates on the frog tank, Tank F, horsetail, or is that what it's called? Gosh, I'm losing my words today. TGIF, it's Friday, and I've just got a little bit longer, and I'm gonna go get on with other stuff. But I had a moment to share these things, and it would have been a waste not to be able to share. So thanks for viewing. If you enjoy this sort of thing, please give me a like or subscribe, and I'll definitely be sharing more moving into the future. And this tank will be one of the gems that we get to see. Again, this was tank J, a 37-gallon native Arkansas tank, and it's just going to be rocking along, especially as that Riccia and the Proserpinaca and the Calitrichia really start banging. It's going to be cool. But I think I may keep the lighting rather low in this, because that's kind of how it was in the locations where these type plants grow. Otherwise, I really appreciate you guys. Thanks for sticking with me for 50 minutes. Love all of you. If you have any questions, drop them in the comment section, and I will catch you soon.